Sell, baby, sell. The Cincinnati Reds absolutely have to be sellers at the deadline, but the question is, do they trade Nick Lodolo and do they trade Spencer Steele?
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, my name is Jeff, and his name is Steve, and on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by FanDuel. By the way, the biggest stage in world soccer is still going on. Let there be goals over on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started right now. A little bit later on in the show, we are going to be discussing the bare cupboard for the Cincinnati Reds farm system as Baseball America has downgraded their ranking in the Major League Farm System rankings. Well, we'll get to that a little bit later on. In just a few minutes, we got to discuss what's going on with Reds country, and quite frankly, even amongst Steve and myself, because this year has gone from bad to worse, and that is just in the vibes around Reds country. But we will begin with the trade deadline, because we've been talking a lot about the Reds being sellers, and yesterday I really laid out the different scenarios, whether you're talking about expiring contracts, whether you're talking about contract options, or guys that have extra team control or more team control after this season. And Nick Lodolo and Spencer Steele were the main characters of that part of the conversation, because in years past, the answer to this would have been simply, of course you don't trade them. The Reds don't get rid of guys that have cheap, controllable years left on their contracts. But if they are to operate like some of the smarter organizations in baseball, they've got to seriously consider this.
Yeah. Nick Krall looked in a camera a long time ago and said, we're going to use the Tampa Bay model for how we build this ball club, which is we get guys to the majors, we trade them with 1 to 2 years of team control remaining. We keep the minor league system stocked, and we rinse and we repeat. And thus far, Nick Krall has done none of that. He stumbled into a couple trades in the fire sale initially that he did with Luis Castillo and some of the other guys. But at the end of the day, he's not reloaded anything. When we get to the farm system later, you'll see what I mean. But you look around this team right now. Nick Lodolo, 2 years of team control. He should be in the discussion. Spencer Steele, 2 years of team control. He should be in the discussion for being traded, because they have to reload at some point in time. Now, you know, my knee-jerk reaction when you pitched this during prep was, do you trade these guys? And I'm like, well, you'll be trading both of them low. In the case of Spencer Steele, you're going to get under his potential because of how he's performed. And in the case of Nick Lodolo, you're going to get a reduced haul based on the fact that you just never know with this blister. But then the more that I thought about it, and the more I remembered back to what Nick Krall looked in a camera and said, this is absolutely the time he should be looking to move those two guys. And this team is so decimated for spare parts of talent that they have to go reload. The cupboards are bare, Jeff. And now is the time to take action in a season that really, as we'll talk about in the next segment, there's no hope for.
Yeah, and to correct one area, you mentioned that Nick Lodolo has 2 years of team control. It's just 1 year of team control past this season, but it's the rest of this year plus next year. And then Spencer Steele's the rest of this year plus the next 2 years. That's where their contract situations are. And I said this on yesterday's show, but I think I'm probably going to say this a couple of times throughout the trade deadline. Teams trade contracts more than they trade stats or production or whatever that might be, where if the contract is good, then they look next to the production and how they fit with the roster and all of that other stuff. But if they don't like the contract, then there's no point in looking at the rest of it. Nick Lodolo and Spencer Steele both have very, very desirable contracts if you're any other team. This isn't a situation where you're trying to trade the $15 million, which is, you know, whatever that would be prorated to the point when he's traded from the Reds to the next team of Eugenio Suarez, and then a mutual option for $15 million next year. You're trading whatever Nick Lodolo is likely to make through arbitration next year, which I still think is much less than $15 million. And then whatever Spencer Steele is due to make through arbitration next year and the following year after that. And then you've got the possibility of signing those guys to extensions if you like what they do because they do have good production outside of that, albeit there's some weird concerns with Nick Lodolo that I think that other teams can assuage their anguish of if they just, do some digging. And I think that ultimately these two guys, if you're talking about the most likely to be dealt amongst this roster, are the most valuable. Is Ellie De La Cruz more valuable? Yes. But I think that you've got to get the kind of haul that I don't think many teams are willing to part with right now for him to be moved. Same with Hunter Green, and same, anybody else that we deem almost untouchable. Like, I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but the reason we say it is because we just don't think that deal is out there right now for those guys. Nick Lodolo and Spencer Steele are not untouchable, and there could be some good deals for the Reds to be had if they make decisions on that. And for me, the interesting part about this is I've already started to hear their names in murmurings amongst writers, not necessarily sources are reporting that so-and-so has had talks about this player with the Reds. It's more so of like, this guy fits well with this team. I've seen our old friend Jim Bowden say that Spencer Steele is the best fit for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I've seen a couple of different people talking about pitching hungry teams that should be looking at Nick Lodolo, because there's a lot of higher end guys like Tarek Skubal who will be available and much more expensive and much more in demand. And Nick Lodolo should be the kind of guy that you're looking at next.
Yeah, the Nick Lodolo thing, there's going to there would be some teams willing to take the coin flip that is Nick Lodolo, because when he's good, he's very good. But
Yes.
when he's blistery or trying to avoid a blister, well, we know what that looks like too. So will there be a team willing to give up what it takes to get him? I could see that happening. That's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, I know you're convinced that whoever trades for Spencer Steele is going to make him a platoon player wherever he goes. I still push back against that. I think he's an everyday player still. I think he's just had a run of some bad luck on a couple different fronts, between trying to play through the injury last year, having a hard time getting going. He looks like he's starting to get going more and more. I still think he's a full-time player. I think a team trying to acquire him and add him to their lineup will pay for him as if he is a full-time player. Now, could you be proven right ultimately somewhere down the road? Maybe so. I still push back a little bit, but whoever trades for him, I think will pay for him as a full-time player.
I really think that platoon-wise, I don't think he has this much power, but he could have very similar value to a lineup as like a Max Muncy, because Max Muncy is a platoon player for the Dodgers. Like, they don't play him against right-handed pitching. They play him against left-handed pitching, and he destroys it. But when it comes to how guys are going to move at the deadline, the Reds are not going to move Spencer Steele if they get offers from teams who are just like, well, he's just a platoon player, so we're going to offer a platoon trade. Nick Krall, I hope, would be like, no, we're not going to do that. We believe he's an everyday player, so you've got to acquire him as such. But for me, it just comes back to the big picture of all of this, because it's clear that after yet another just dismal performance on Tuesday night, Zach Wheeler notwithstanding, I know he's a former Cy Young winner. I know that he should be an all-star this year, and it's kind of crazy that he's not. And I know that he's an amazing pitcher, but they just absolutely laid down against him. And then they gave up a home run to Kyle Schwarber, and they lost another one. And here we are looking at the big picture of the Reds are not contending. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to sneak on in. They're not going to, find their way to the wild card. It ain't happening.
The hashtag for this season that brings up the Reds logo should be #SellBabySell. That is really the only hashtag that needs to be attached to. That should be the only hashtag that they consider. But listen, Jeff, it's been a rough season, especially when you take into account that at the beginning of it, Nick Krall looked in a camera and said the Cincinnati Reds are going to compete for this division. Terry Francona looked in a camera and said the Cincinnati Reds are going to compete for this division. They are not competing for this division, and apathy is setting in Reds country. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Even though the USA is out of the World Cup, I guess they're still playing, and that means that every goal still pays over on FanDuel. Again, if you don't know this promo, if you go to FanDuel right now, activate the token in your profile, and you place a wager on a World Cup match, every goal scored by both teams in that game turns into bonus bets for you. And you can take those bonus bets and go over to Major League Baseball. Taking a look at some futures right now, Sal Stewart's still number 2 in the National League as far as odds to win the NL Rookie of the Year. J.J. Weatherholt is favored at -170, and Sal Stewart's at +350 now, right behind him. They find that close, and then the rest of the field is kind of far behind. I mean, you have Bryce Eldridge at 10-1, Carson Bench at 12-1, TJ Rumfield from the Colorado Rockies at 20-1. But our man Sal, he's the closest there is other than the favorite, J.J. Weatherholt, right now. That's all over at FanDuel.com. Again, every goal pays as long as the World Cup goes along, which I think is ending here very soon. That's all at FanDuel.com.
Thanks for being an everydayer and checking out Locked On Reds each and every day. You already live this team. You can elevate your game and go ads-free. An ads-free version of Locked On Reds available in the audio feeds. $5 a month, $50 a year. The link for that is down in the show description. It's lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Where you're going to get ads-free Locked On Reds. Plus, we've got some other interesting things that may be coming your way. Jeff and I are working on some stuff. So get in now so you don't miss any of what we've got coming at you. All right, Jeff, apathy. Apathy is an ugly thing. It's a bad thing. There are seasons where this team performs like this, and it was to be expected, and you and I roll with it. And we look for the optimism. We look for the silver linings. We look for the fun. There are seasons that, like this one, where we thought they were going to be something they're turning out not to be, and we are feeling it just deep down in our hearts. I'm feeling it especially hard this year, more so than I have in seasons past for a while now. So I think if you look across the social medias, you look at what people are saying in the comment section on the social media, all the comments, it feels like we're all in that same boat together, that everybody has kind of this certain feeling about the Cincinnati Reds right now.
Yeah, because it just doesn't make sense to see where this team was at the end of April, to see the expectations it had as the season began, to see the offseason moves that they made, and now they're here, where they are only 5 wins better than the worst record in baseball, which is the Los Angeles Angels. And if you factor in losses and all that other stuff, they're only like 6.5 games better. And it's like, it might even be 6 games. The math is hard because nobody does standings for worst team in the league, but so you have to kind of work that out myself, and that's math, and that's hard. But they're only like 6 games better than the Colorado Rockies, who are not trying, who haven't tried for years, and they are in the like very beginning stages of a rebuild in Colorado. And that's where the Reds are comparative right now. And sure, you can say this or that, you can say it's injuries, but it's largely just ineffectiveness. It's largely just guys not living up to what they should be doing. And then you look at the coaching staff and you're like, where's the development? Where's that coming from? You look at the front office, you're like, where are the moves to help supplement this? Nothing is happening. And it just kind of feels like that everyone has adopted the same philosophy as ownership, which is just like, you know what? The record is secondary. As long as the budget is balanced, the record is secondary. And Reds fans are really starting to just get exhausted with that feeling.
There's a scenario playing out right now in the city of Cincinnati with the tone and the tenor of the everyday fan, the tone and the tenor of the casual fan, the tone and the tenor of the daily media that cover this team.
Yeah.
There is a chance.
Broadcast is feeling it, man.
Yep.
You can
Broadcast is feeling it. The talk shows are feeling it. There's a scenario playing out that if the Bengals go like they're supposed to this year, this town's going to get turned on its head, and the Reds are going to be the forgotten stepchild, because we've talked for years now about them losing a generation of fans. The Bengals have leaned in to being better this year. So, I look around and I worry for this team. Will ownership care? I don't think so. I think that as long as the CBA doesn't price them out, they're happy to just collect their paycheck from Major League Baseball at the beginning of the season, and it really doesn't matter how many tickets they sell through the course of a year. So I still maintain that if you ask Phil Castellini what kind of job Nick Krall's doing, he gets 2 thumbs up. Nick Krall has demonstrated an inability to go out and get anybody that really, truly works. He's taking some moderate swings at guys that just haven't pan out. See Candelario, Jeimer. See a guy named Myers playing in the outfield for a hot minute.
Yeah.
You know, he's gone out and got names that you might recognize, but it's always way too late where they're way past their prime and it's not worked out. He's not really made one big move that's worked out.
And I was reminded the other day of the fact that the Reds had to trade money from their rotation only to later that offseason go and get Mike Minor, who was basically making the same amount of money as the guys they traded away. And there's different moves like that make no sense. I mean, Brian Hayes makes no sense. That trade at the time, I really tried hard to see the value in it. And I was so wrong because there wasn't any. Because at that point, Sal Stewart was close. And it's clear he's not as good a glove as Brian Hayes, but it is so much better of a bat than Brian Hayes.
And you should reserve judgment. You should reserve your judgment on Brian Hayes because I don't know if you saw this, but the Reds are rushing him back.
No, you're right. You're right.
He got his 2 games down in Dayton, 6 at bats.
He went 1 for 6.
He got a hit in Dayton.
The best
against high A pitching.
I'm sure if we asked Tom Nichols,
they said, Brian, how do you feel? And he said, I'm a little sore. And they said, absolutely right answer. You're moving to Louisville. Let's progress this rehab. We need to get you back to Cincinnati. For God's sake.
And I'm sure if we asked Tom Nichols about that swing on that hit, he'd say it was the most beautiful swing he's ever saw. Probably not. But when it comes to this whole franchise and just the way that everything moves, it's so frustrating. And I know that there's a very small chance that they make these types of moves. But I'll tell you this, Steve, I will take ownership seriously if they reset the front office. If they decide Nick Krall ain't it, and we're not just going to promote from within, we're going to do a search, we're going to bring in some new people, and we're going to fix this, then I'll take it seriously. But if they either A, keep the status quo, or B, move on from Nick Krall, but promote Brad Metter and don't really make many more changes there, then no. I find it a hard sell to get me to take them seriously if they are going to continue to tell us that the front office is currently constructed is going to build a winning ball club, because they've had years now and they have failed.
They've got to go out. I said this a few weeks back and I wanted to expand upon it just for a second. What they need is, they need a lightning in the bottle type of hire in this front office. And that's the guy that has a new way of thinking that they just kind of get out of the way and let him cook. And maybe you get some magic. I'm talking about like Billy Beane in Oakland when he first started the Moneyball stuff. I'm talking about Theo Epstein when he first came on the scene and nobody knew who he was and they let him cook and he was doing great things. Those are the kind of moves that this front office needs to have in it. Those are the kind of things that ownership needs to set up. They're not going to pay the money to go out and get a guy that's already done that, that's already demonstrated they have the ability to do that. But I'll tell you this, that guy is not in this system right now. Nope. He does not have a job with the Cincinnati Reds right now. They have to go get somebody and get out of their way and let them try something new. And that's the only thing that will give me an inkling of excitement or confidence that this front office could move in a better direction and get things right.
Because I've already seen the comments, and I wholly agree with anybody that is commenting this. When we're talking about, boy, the Reds should make this move, they should trade this guy, they should look for this in a deal, whatever it might be. And everyone's first comment is, yeah. And at the end of the day, it's Nick Krall that's doing it. So at the end of the day, whenever the Reds make a trade, this trade deadline, the apathy that Reds country is currently feeling is going to bleed over into that, where they're just like, great, the Reds made a trade. Sorry, Nick Krall made a trade. Moving on. When's training camp start? Like, that's what the feeling's going to be. And I cannot believe that this is what we are sitting here saying in July on a year where the Reds were 20-11 in April, on the top of the division, after the first month of the season, and now they are afterthoughts. They are bottom dwellers. They are welcome mats for the NL Central right now. It is sad, and it needs to be addressed by an ownership group that I think you, me, and you listening or watching probably believe don't care.
It's a fair assessment, Jeff. I think I absolutely 100% agree with you. And if you look around, we've talked already about the guys that they should be looking to trade. We've talked about why they need to be making those trades. It's time to start restocking the cupboards because they are empty. And that also includes the farm system, because Baseball America has downgraded the Cincinnati Reds farm system. And if you thought it couldn't get much lower than it already was, well, it did. We're talking about that coming up next.
A big thank you to our friends over at Amazon for this limited break. This back-to-school season, spend less on your kids with Amazon. We all know how crazy that back-to-school shopping can get. I mean, it starts with just a few items on the list, then suddenly you're shopping for supplies, clothing, lunch gear, tech, and about 10 other things that you did not expect to happen. It all adds up fast. I mean, that first day outfit is so key, right? When your kids spend days planning the perfect first day school fit because they want to make a great first impression, you end up putting almost as much thought into it as they do. At least the first day photos are worth it, though, right? When the school says, you know, your child needs a calculator or something as well, or headphones or a tablet for class, and somehow you're buying another one before the semester is halfway over. Since when did kids need so much tech for third grade? Remember, with Amazon's low back-to-school prices, just spend less on your kids, because every dollar you don't spend on them is a dollar that you haven't spent on them. Shop back to school at Amazon and spend less on your kids. I invite you to can't think of words right now, to continue the conversation with us after the show is over on social media. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs over on X or on TikTok. You can also follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs over on X, and you can follow the show at Locked On Reds on any social media app there is. All right, Steve, Baseball America released its mid-season prospect rankings. Over the last couple of weeks, it's been like, you know, their top 100, organizational's top 30s, and then just yesterday, they released their 2 days ago, they released their brand new mid-season updates to the organization rankings and how each team stacks up with each other. The Reds, before the season, were number 19. So it's not like they were great. They were still in the bottom half, but they were in the top 2/3. If we want to go there, they've knocked them down. They are now 25th. And it's striking that they're this far down for a couple of different reasons. Now, I don't love doing this because I think that it's cool to see these guys work through the farm system and get to the point where the Reds can believe in these guys. But they've got so many dudes in the top 10, at least according to Baseball America, they're at AA or lower. And most of these guys are 20 and 19 and 18. Steele Hall, the number 1 pick for the Reds last year, who is 18 years old, is the number 3 prospect in the Reds organization right now. And we know he's a long way away. The number 2 prospect in the Reds organization, according to Baseball America, is Edwin Arroyo. So he's going to graduate from these rankings pretty soon. Number 1 is Alfredo Duno, who is 20, who is a catcher. And depending on how much the Reds buy him sticking at that position, it's probably still 2 years away from making it to the major leagues. So all that being said, the Reds have found themselves in a position where years ago we heard one Nick Krall tell us that there would be waves of talent and, you know, there would be many different, you know, call-ups and different, you know, this, that, and the others. Well, there's a pretty big gap here in talent, and it's not working itself out right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right with, talking about Alfredo Duno. 2028 is probably the earliest Cincinnati sees him. Steele Hall could probably arrive on that same timeline if every single thing goes right and he has a tremendous jump year, but it's more likely that it's 3 years before Hall is available for this team. You look around, Jeff, there's just really no reinforcements coming. And that's a big part of the problem right now. And it speaks to Nick Krall failing to deliver on all the things he said he was going to do. He was going to go churn this roster and continue to bring in those waves. And, and when he said he was going to eliminate the peaks and valleys, I didn't realize it was intention of his to go subterranean.
Really just eliminated the peaks.
He just went subterranean. They're underground now. There's nowhere to go but up. This team is bad, and everything he has done has been bad. And it's hard. You look at AAA Louisville's roster right now, Jeff. There is nothing outside of Hector Rodriguez there that I am remotely interested in seeing get a big league call up. Not one guy besides Hector Rodriguez.
Who hasn't already been here, like Chase
Right,
Petty
who
and
hasn't
Jose Franco, they've already been
been here. Right. There's nobody left. The AA guys, and most of the talent at AA Chattanooga just got there from High A Dayton. They moved everybody up together a little over a week ago. So those guys haven't even begun to establish themselves and prove themselves at the AA level. The cupboard is so bare. There are spider webs collecting in the corner, Jeff. It is not a fun time if you're in this farm system and trying to evaluate it and trying to push guys forward.
And that's why it's tough, getting too excited about anyone trying to say the Reds should rebuild. How do you plan on doing that? Because rebuilding would mean what the Reds basically did from 2016 through 2018, where it wasn't even that they were calling up top prospects and then letting them get into the major leagues and letting them really work. It was that they were filling most of the 26-man roster, back then 25-man roster, with retreads, just guys. And if they acquired a pseudo group,
I'm pretty sure in 2016 they were like, hey, do you own a baseball glove? You're our guy.
I mean, these are the years that we were talking about Asher Wojciechowski being a key starting pitcher for this team. We all remember those days fondly. But looking at what Baseball Reference has in their top 30, Steve, the two pitchers that they have in their top 10, Chase Petty and Jose Franco, are the closest. Sorry, there's three pitchers in the top 10. One is Aaron Watson. He's 19. The Reds just picked him out of high school last year. He's got a long way before the Reds are thinking about him. And then the next guy that you get to is Shen Eng Len. Remember, he was a two-way player that the Reds had signed internationally who decided that he was going to focus on pitching. He's 20, and he's still in low A. So, it's going to be a while before we see him too. And that's the biggest thing that they marked ahead of this draft, is that the Reds' biggest system weakness is pitching depth, because there's been key injuries to guys who we kind of thought, I don't know if anybody remembers this name, but we kind of talked about him a little bit. He was a third-round pick back in 2023, a guy named Ty Floyd, came in from LSU. He has dealt with both a shoulder injury and a Tommy John surgery to his throwing arm since being picked in 2023, and has barely pitched. Luke Holman and Hunter Holland, who have both been high draft picks for the Reds in recent years on the mound, are both dealing with injuries and not pitching right now. It's just, it feels like anybody who you have seen in past years that you're like, that guy feels like he's coming up here soon. Yeah, they've been dealing with injuries. They're not coming up here soon. They're trying to rebuild their careers at this point, because Baseball America did not list Ty Floyd in the top 30. A third-round pick 3 years ago for the Reds is not in the top 30 of their organizational rankings for prospects. That goes back to what we said in the first segment, where it's what we have heard for really the better part of our lives. Not just Nick Krall saying this, but Nick Krall said it a lot over the last few years, although we have heard it a lot less here recently, is we're a draft and develop team. Well, the development has been off and the drafting has been off. So what are you left with? And that's why we're in this predicament.
And that is where we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for
That
today. That's
bombshell.
going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for being here every day. We appreciate you so much. Make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell. If you're in the audios, click the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of the shows we've got coming your way. For the audio folks, we're going to ask you to go check out Locked On MLB. 3 great shows over there for you covering Major League Baseball from a national perspective. Sully's got you covered with all things Major League Baseball. Former Reds reliever Mike Stanton in Back to the Bullpen has Major League Baseball from a retired player's perspective. And then, of course, the folks over at MLB Game Night are watching every single game, every single night, so that you don't have to. For the video, folks, head over to Locked On's first ever 24/7 national YouTube channel, where all of the experts of the entire network are talking ball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Jeff and I are going to be back in your feeds tomorrow, gathering up all the news, the notes, the rumors, the reports, and the information to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
And if you made it this far, you're super cool. You need to come say hi to us at the ballpark this weekend. Pretty much
Thursday,
all weekend.
Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday,
Steve and
Sunday,
I will
I'll
be there. Both of us.
That is right.
Both be there. Well, I won't be there on Sunday, but you'll be there all those 4 days, and I'll be there 3 of the 4.
Weekend long. Messing with the Cubs fans.